Hello and welcome to Labour Lens. I am Sharon Ijason. On this week's edition of the program, we'll be discussing about several challenges that workers are faced with currently, especially the issue of fuel scarcity and more. We also have new stories for you. We will be right back. Delayed justice while seeking redress in an industrial dispute has become more worrisome for workers in Nigeria. At the Labour Adjudication Forum in Lagos, organized by the Nigeria Employers Consultative Association (NECA), various stakeholders spoke about the present and the future of work from tripartite perspectives.
We urge all member companies and indeed corporate Nigeria to harness the endless benefits from this forum. It should be noted that industrial peace is key to national development.
In 1998, the ILO further institutionalized those principles by its declaration on the fundamental principles and rights at work. Through this declaration, the ILO was able to establish fundamental conventions which holds the core principles of industrial relation.
The vision statement of the Federal Ministry of Labor and Employment is to have a society with peaceful and harmonious industrial relations, where safe and decent work are guaranteed and social security for all Nigerians is secured.
President of the National Industrial Court of Nigeria said the focus is now on emerging issue of jurisdiction, employers favoring flexibility at workplace, while employees seek job security.
The employment contract needs to remain the centerpiece of labor protection. In fact, with or without a formal employment contract, and irrespective of the status, there is no gainsaying that every worker, as the weaker in the employment relationship, needs protection. So, if experience is anything to go by, a good number of cases are lost because of the carelessness and in the main lack of knowledge of lawyers as to what and how we do it at the NIC.
At the forum, participants discouraged precarious work conditions, while the United Nations believes that decent work should be promoted for economic development. During the conference, it was noted that the standardization of employment of workers has been reduced in the country and across the globe due to the advent of artificial intelligence and digitalization of jobs. Right now, we have more freelance jobs, outsourced workers, and also workers who are temporarily employed, which means they have limited rights in the company in which they operate. From this conference, it brings to fore that labor leaders have to do more to ensure that there is inclusivity, to ensure that workers' rights are protected.
The moment they introduced this contributed something, the fraud has been escalating. The fraud behind it has been escalating much more than what it was before. I don't say they don't perpetrate fraud before, but for now, it's escalating, and to me, it's like it's becoming too cumbersome for the federal government to even condone. So this is why I think we should go back to our status quo. Because people, when they were paying it before, the people that collected it, they know what they collect, and they know the way they are enjoying it. But since they force pensioners to be contributing now, even the portion for the government, this portion they are expected to pay, government to deny the pensioners. They don't pay it in time.
If what the workers are demanding for now should be acceptable to government or not, that is, workers are now demanding that the contributory pension scheme, whereby both the worker and the employer are contributing, should stop. That issue the contribution should only come from the employer. This is similar to the old system, whereby only the employer was making the payment, so that at the point of retirement, it is then the worker his entitlement will be worked out. He will now know what he will be entitled to either as pension or as gratuity. But in the case of the system the workers are demanding for now is that the aspect being paid by the employee should now stop while the employer does the contribution alone. I see it as a right demand in the sense that the employer should be able to determine what his employee will be entitled to after leaving the service for 35 years or as the case may be. So it is but in this case, the employer at the point of retirement, he will now know what he's entitled to, and as usual, it will be broken into two, part to be pension and part of it to be gratuity.
On the profile interview segment this week, I'll be speaking with the National President of the Association of Senior Civil Servants of Nigeria. It brings us up to speed on what government and relevant stakeholders should do to ensure that Nigerian workers actually live a convenient and comfortable life. He also spoke about the need for the restoration of gratuity of pensioners after leaving active service. It's good to have you on the program.
I'm glad to be here.
A lot has been happening in the world of work, and maybe we should start from the challenges you and I are faced with as Nigerian workers currently. There's the persistent fuel scarcity, and we also have the cashless economy. I don't know if I would say which is being imposed upon us, so we just have to adapt in good time. As a president representing workers, what has been the feedback from your members, and what would be your reaction towards this development?
Well, thank you, Sharon. It's very worrisome, I must say. Worrisome in the sense that a lot of workers are complaining. I've received quantums of calls. You know, most of them are not able to make it to their workplaces because there is no cash, and banks are not paying over the counters, and the long queue in the fuel stations, the cashless policy, as the case may be, vis-a-vis the economic reality. So it's worrisome, because you don't expect someone that is boarding commercial bus to tell the driver, give me your account number, let me pay 200 Naira, and so on. A lot of these people don't even have a bank account, talk less of accepting and when you also look at the transfer in terms of the network, you know, even those that have the money, even those that will accept the transfer, the network is also of a concern. It's an ill wind that is blowing nobody any good. So there's noise in the land, and government should really come now to look at it. Otherwise, it can snowball into the answers which we try to avoid. And most especially when you look at the election that is around the corner, it's worrisome.
I don't know if I should put more pressure in what your recommendations would be to the relevant stakeholders.
Yeah, I think that no sane government at the period of the election should allow this to go on unabated. You know, the CBN governor who effected this policy as a result of the act should do something, you know, to direct the bank immediately to pay over the counter. I think that will at least give a stopgap.
You just made that announcement.
Yeah, because you see, one thing is making an announcement, but we are talking of the practical reality. He may make it as a political statement. When the money doesn't get to the bank, what can you do? The bankers are not the one that prints the notes. He knows where the notes are coming from. I expected him to say, so amount has gone to this bank. Then we now know. We follow it up. But if you see, when you now sit down and just make a blanket statement, I've directed the bank, let me tell you, in policy, I'm an expert in policy. When you make pronouncement, the masses expect it to be implemented immediately. But you should not just make a pronouncement when you have not given the wherewithal. It would have been more proper for the governor to say, First Bank, we have released so number of cash. Union Bank, we have released so. Let them now distribute to their branches and so on. Or in alternative, in so states, this is amount of cash flow. This, that will now give the consent. Everybody will now, so that when they go to the bank, they will now say that authoritatively, this is the statistic as listed by the central bank. That will help, because even the bankers are not safe. They can mob them at any point in time, and it may result to even breaking the ATM machine. So I think that the policy makers should know that this policy coming at this time, we are not saying it's a bad policy, but for God's sake, there must be a work plan for you to implement policy successfully. Now you've set a timeline, 31st January. You didn't allow that timeline to finish strong. You now shift it to 10 February. It is expected. Even some people who are very lackadaistic about it will say, well, even at that 10, they will shift it again. So that makes the masses not taking government serious. They will not do it. They will shift it. So people supposed to work towards the deadline earlier set, and government supposed to at least show that they have the will to implement it based on that timeline. And that is what because if that was established, by now everything will have been stable, and the new Naira will have taken effect, because the quantum will have flushed away the old one, and they will have been that social mix that will stabilize the economy. What we are going through now, we wouldn't have happened.
Looking at, still talking about money, we know that Nigeria is still faced with inflation, and it means that the bargaining power for an average Nigerian worker is actually limited or reduced, which brings us to the discussion of the national minimum wage. I know the government has said at different fora that they're trying to increase maybe the allowance or thereabout, but I am also aware that the new national minimum wage, there should be a new national minimum wage this year, because if you want to look at the 5-year review period, it is elapsed or it's about to elapse. So what do you think needs to be done at this point in time? What is the union doing in terms of engaging relevant authorities or stakeholders for everyone to get on the negotiating table to get a review of the minimum wage?
Engagement of government by the union depend on if the government is sincere. The sincerity of the government is a factor you need to look at. When the last negotiation on the minimum wage was, it was expected that every 5 years. And let me tell you, a government that cares for the workers supposed to have done it, automatically. You don't, because when government set up a committee to start discussion, you are talking about another 1 year. Because if government set up a committee to change this bulb, before you know, they will say, this bulb must go through a procurement process. And then they will set up another committee to look at. So it is cumbersome. The bottleneck is so much. Why don't government look at the indices based on that and said, in 2018 or thereabout, when Jonathan moved the minimum wage from 7,000 or thereabout to 18,000 minimum wage, there wasn't a noise factor. It wasn't a noise factor. But because government is known for propaganda, they want to sell. And how do you think it's feasible? Now average Nigerian worker with static pay, with all the socioeconomic challenges, they are the worst hit. Because I can tell you, when you look at what is playing out in the economy today, the politicians are now thinking that if they stifle the worker, that whatever they are going to tell the worker now, they will accept so that they can vote them. But they know, I'm sure they will soon realize that it is an ill wind that will blow both the politician no good, because the workers are tired. So nothing any politician will come and tell you now that you take it as anything to go by. We've heard of the story.
So what will be Nigerian workers' expectation post February general elections?
The expectation is that we should vote someone that have the capacity, that have the capability, that have the skill, that have the know-how to turn things around. Because already the government has overborrowed. And when you look at the inflationary rate, you know, even the one coming may not be an angel, but at least let it be a necessary evil. Then we can be able to contend with. Because if things are not done, already the foundation is already destroyed. So nothing the righteous can do. But at least he will help the worker to have a sense of belonging. A government that can come and bring some incentive that will caution the effects of all this. You know, that's why each time they look at and say petroleum subsidy for the interests of the workers, I see it as a capital scam.
Okay, moving on to the issue of pensioners. I'm aware that you're on the negotiating table as regards ensuring that there is negotiation towards the restoration of the payment of gratuity. Can you bring us up to speed on?
You know, Sharon, you see, when Obasanjo government came up with 2004 contributory pension, we expected that it would have been, you know, one of the best policies and wherever it was coming from. But I can tell you that in the core civil service, the workers are suffering. Because nobody realized that gratuity has been technically suppressed by the players. Soon when I came on board, I realized, I said, no, that the Contributory Pension Act of 2004, as amended in 2014 or thereabout, did not stop the payment of gratuity. Because if you look at the section, it said employer can pay additional. So they suppressed that fact. And we engaged the Pension Commission. They agreed that it did not stop. But, you know, we need to go again to repeal that act so that they can amend it to. So what we are canvassing is, let them amend that act and let there be a provision very clearly, unambiguous, stated that gratuity, payment of gratuity, and they state the guideline. Because you see, in the private sector, before you even talk of it, they give you that one in bulk. It's a gratification. Government you have served 35 years or 60 years, whichever comes first. You are just going and wait for 2 years for you to get the one they said that it will be the best. Do you know a lot of people die? I mean, for God's sake. At that age, you are already living on drugs. Where will you borrow money to buy these drugs? You now go to the National Health Insurance Act. They are generic drugs that are not covered. You are sent back to your village, of which you were not useful for 35 years. And all of a sudden, stroke, knock you, and then you die. They say it's wish. No, thinking. Your benefit you have not collected. Your children are before you. With the African big brother, which you have be your brother by an extended family, all descended on you. Do you know civil servants retire without a roof over their head? Not because they wouldn't have built, but the situation they find themselves. And government is clapping. When I was a younger person in the 80s, they say housing for all in the year 2000. I don't know whether year 2000 has not come. Nothing. Nothing. The Federal Staff Housing Loan Board, how much do they give? How much do they have in their kitty that people that apply can get? They put a benchmark of 5 million. What can 5 million do? Can he renovate? You know. So that was why when we met Mr. President, we said, no, increase it. And I'm happy, I think they are working toward that because he directed immediately the head of service to look into that and so on. There are things government need to do. Let them not look at they said the civil service is overloaded. How? The civil service is the engine of government because they drive government policy. A good government must care about the civil service. You see, there is nothing you can do when the operating environment is already faulty. You can't do anything. That's why if you like, bring the medical doctor and give him Minister of Health, like the case of what have they achieved? It's better to, once you get into the Senate, you talk, you do this, you do this, do this. Go there first. It's just like people clamoring to be the president of this country. I sympathize with them. Because what is happening is like a car without engine. That is how you see Nigeria. So we are also concerned about it, so that they should not be thinking, when you get there, you do. Buhari thought as much. But by the time Buhari got there, hey, apart from the sickness he experienced, that sickness was not because he was to be sick. No. It was because what he discovered sent him to London hospital to have a routine. By now, that's why the man said he has seen all, that he has done his best. Who will not say he has done his best? Is it easy to inherit problem and survive for 8 years? The most annoying aspect of it, the politicians pretend that all is well.
And they know all isn't well.
How can all be well? Look at now. We were concerned about the review of the labor laws, which would have checkmated all these unfair labor practices. This 9 assembly may not even pass it. The reason is that when would they pass it? From now till March election, they will resume maybe 1 month, and then the new one will come in June. Why would they pass it? And by the time the 10 assembly will come, they will start all over again. That is what we've been experiencing since 2005. And you see employers, especially the Lebanese, the Chinese, they are enslaving Nigerians. With the present socio-economic realities on ground, whoever will not find himself, whether to take to office or not, you see them. Sharon, you will hear a lot of sack from next week. Unless government cop this cashless situation, fuel situation, it will be counterproductive. Why can't we have a good transportation system called tram, where you can bring in private sector, let them run it, create the enabling environment. Instead to create enabling environment to tackle insecurity and ensure that the property and life of the people are safe, they are busy giving windows to insurgents to ride on our solid minerals, chasing the farmers away. Wherever they find that there are enough solid minerals, they chase them away in pretense that there is Boko Haram and causing war. They now started scaffolding and then mining and cut them away. I mean, so except you were born in another clime, you can now sit down and say Nigeria. No, for us who were born here, we know their tricks. They have come again. Fela say they don't come again. They have come again. Another 4 years, another 8 years, and so on. No, enough is enough now.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Sharon.
Very insightful, as
you are someone that knows what is going on here. So we try to say our best anytime, any day. But we also believe that government should think outside the box or bring in people who have the ideas to make this country better. Nigeria is our country. We cannot do otherwise. But we live here and make sure Nigeria will be great again. Thank you.
And that's all we can take on today's edition of the program. Join us next week for a fresh edition of the show. I am Sharon Ijason. Thanks for watching, and remember that labor creates wealth.